Hi, I'm Joy, and welcome to Pilates Perspectives. Today, we will be talking about the beginnings of Contrology with John Howard Steele. Before we get started, let's take a moment to check in. So today's check-in is your feet. Your feet are your foundation, and your feet get you to where you want to go. So why don't we start just by kicking off your shoes, provided you're not driving or you're in a place that will not allow you to do that. But if you can do that, take your shoes off, lift your toes and widen them, and then lower them to the floor and feel the ground underneath you. Now keep pushing the ground away, and can you lift your arch and curl your toes under? And then spread out the whole bottom of your foot, nice and wide and long, and lift your toes again and feel how the dome of the arch of your foot lifts. Now this time, place your toes back down. Feel the four corners of your feet. And if you're sitting or if you're standing, see if you can feel the four corners of your feet balanced, or do you tend to rock to one side or to the other? So find that balance. And then how does that line up your tibia or your leg bone? How do your legs organize? How does your pelvis feel? If you're sitting, just rock a little front and back. And if you're standing, do the same. Your feet, tap, 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 tap them on the ground. Now tap them faster and faster. And then stop. Can you feel the sensation underneath them? So many nerve endings, so much information, so much opportunity with your feet. Okay, so thanks for taking that extra moment of your time today. Joining us for our conversation is John Howard Steele, student and close personal friend of the Joseph Pilates. His book, Caged Lion, Joseph Pilates and His Legacy, acts as the most comprehensive account we have on Joe as a teacher and the care and effort taken to preserve his life's work after his passing in 1967. To provide some additional context and banter, Ken Endelman, close friend of John's and CEO of Balanced Body, will be joining us today as well. Here we are with John Howard Steele, author of Caged Lion. And I'm also here with Ken Endelman, CEO and a really super nice guy from Balanced Body. And he has his copy of Caged Lion. And in truth, I put mine on my counter to bring with me today because I have a signed copy, John, that I am very, very proud of, that doesn't leave my house unless it's with me on my person. And of course, I left it on my counter. So, but we are so happy to have you here for our Pilates Perspectives podcast. Thank you so much.
I'm equally happy to be here. I've been, in touch with you guys now for a long, long time, since the 90s.
I know, and you know that guy Ken Endelman, don't you?
Yeah, since 90, somewhere in the beginning of the lawsuit.
Yeah. So Ken, how did you and John cross paths?
I kind of heard of John, but I really didn't. He wasn't really separate from just kind of all the rumors and things that I had heard, and so I really didn't know much about him, except that there was this guy, right? And I think during the lawsuit, either Larry or Gordon discovered you probably through Deborah Lesson. I don't know how that came down, John. Do you remember?
No, what happened was one of the people in Santa Fe who also was taught by Romana in New York called me and told me vaguely that this lawsuit was boiling up and that there was this person in Sacramento who was sort of taking the lead. Would I please call you? Which I did. We had a very short conversation, and I don't know how it got from there to the point where I was involved with helping you with the lawsuit, but it grew quite slowly. I came up I flew up once, and that's when I met you up in Sacramento. And from there, I just stayed in touch with the lawyers and with you. Then I was deposed in New York, and I think you were there.
Hmm.
And I knew several lawyers. One of them on the other side worked for me at one point.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I was just sort of kibitzing on the sideline, and that's how it started.
If I was in a Pilates trademark lawsuit, Ken, I can't imagine wanting somebody kibitzing on the sideline other than John Steele, right? I mean, it's your history with this goes back to the very beginning.
Yeah. And that's what I think. They deposed me for 2 or 3 days
Hmm.
and, paid my way to New York and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I was a coat holder, really. I was
Hmm.
holding Ken's coat and the lawyer's coat, saying, "Go out there and fight this battle. These people are
Hmm.
nuts." And that was one of my roles. The other role was that I did have a lot of information about what Joe would have wanted to protect his invention, his theory, his equipment's design, and that was what was important at the trial.
Right. So
So
let's go there, John. Let's
yeah.
let's sort of, you've already brought up Ramana and Deborah Lesson. Ken, you brought up Deborah Lesson. So these are names that are going to start walking us back in time, but let's actually go to the source. Let's go to Joe. I remember reading in your book, which I really think came out at just the right time and really holds just the right space for what we're seeing now in the growth of Pilates, by the way. I remember reading in your book that it was almost very sensory, your experience of walking into Joe's studio the very first time. The way it smelled, the way the equipment felt, the exercises you did, how it made you feel. Can you take us back to sort of that like first experience? What brought you there first? And then what was it like?
What brought me there first was my mother nagging me about my stiff neck. And I had a chronic stiff neck. I had it for years. I don't know when it started, maybe when I went to law school or whatever. But the only way I could sort of get through the day was with my head tilted. And I went to chiropractors and all. And my mother, who was going to Joe, and my father was going at that time, my mother just kept nagging me about it. And finally, I agreed to go.
As we do.
And Jewish mother. And I went with probably the worst attitude anyone could ever go to him with, because he had zero bedside manner. So already I walked into this place with the attitude, this guy's a quack, and I was a little concerned about his relationship to my my mother, and that was it. Now, only when I started writing the book, which was 40 years later, did I realize that he too had a terrible attitude toward me. I was a silver spoon in my mouth kid of one of his better clients. And what the hell was he wasting his time at his age with this guy who's coming here in his spiffy Wall Street Brooks Brothers outfit with shiny shoes? And his attitude toward me, it was a complete waste of time. So we started off, once he walked me into the studio, which in those days, you walked right into the exercise room. There was no reception area, no receptionist, no nothing. You just walk right in, and there were many times, not when I did it at that hour the first time, but there were 10, 20 people just doing things all over. No classes, no anything. Anyhow, I walk into this room, I see all these crazy equipment. I'd never seen anything like this. Had no idea. And I was being led by a guy who was half naked. He was just wearing shorts on a cold day. And he pointed me to the so-called locker room, which had no lockers or any room either. And, I was very freaked out. But something happened, and he literally got control of me. He sat me down on the reformer from a certain side, a certain way. He made me do it a certain way. And I don't know what it was inside of me that said, just go with it. Just keep going with it, and you'll be fine. I was desperate to keep up with everything he threw at me. He was desperate to throw as much as he could at me to discourage me from coming back. He didn't want me or anyone else as a client at that point. He had 10, 15, 20 people, and he was tired. He was worn out, very bitter. And I got through the session, and something stuck with me. And oddly enough, as I have rethought it, I believe stuck with him about me. So that's how it started. And whether I came back the second day, for me, was a huge question. Why would I come back? I ended up vomiting up there. I ended up leaving to go to work, completely wet from sweat. A shower didn't do a bit of good because I didn't have a towel. So it was a terrible mess at the end of the first day. And something drew me back, which I have in a way analyzed over the last 50, 60 years, and I've come to, some conclusion, which I talk about in the book, as to what it was coming from Joe that got me back.
What was that?
Well, he was one of the few people in my life, if not the only one, that conveyed a message to me that doing my best was good enough. It was never good enough in my home. If I got a B plus, why didn't I get an A? If I got an A, why didn't I get an A plus? If I lost in the second round playing tennis at Forest Hills, why did I lose? But with Joe, the negative didn't exist. It just wasn't there in the world. So you never did anything wrong. There is no wrong in Pilates. All he cared about was someone who tried to do his best. And that, I think, meant something to me. My life was a treadmill of trying to keep up with why didn't I do better? Why didn't I do this? And why didn't I do that? And losing was a sin and things like that. So all of a sudden, this street guy, I mean, that's all you could say about him, treated me like I guess I wanted to be treated.
I find that really interesting. And let me see if I could put words to like what is impacting me about what you said. Is that when I came into Pilates, which was the late 90s, there was an awful lot of focus on doing it right. And there was an awful lot of focus on, it was almost to the point where became exclusionary.
Yes.
Of anybody who really wanted to come in and some way experiment or better themselves through Pilates. So what you're saying is here was this man who, by all accounts, he was throwing a lot at you, was very specific in what he wanted, right? There was a sense of specificity, but not necessarily a sense of I'm going to fix you and you're going to do it right. And you're going to, or you're, like there didn't seem to be those two components there.
Well, that's precisely what occurred. And that never changed in the 4 or 5 years that I was with him before he died. There was no wrong ever, ever in Pilates. And there was no competition. There was no classes. So, you never felt like you did anything wrong. You never made a mistake. I mean, sometimes you do an exercise and you use 3 springs instead of 2, and you just fixed it. I mean, it didn't matter. Nothing.
And you kept moving, right, John?
Mm-hmm. Kept moving. You
Yeah.
never stopped moving for
Yeah.
45 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's and he made sure of that, and Clara made sure of that. They or Bob Seed or John or anyone in there, that was sort of their job. They were cattle prods. They kept you moving. And if you walked into the studio, and I don't remember 4 or 5 reformers, you got to look at that picture with Mary in it. But if they were busy, you found a spot on a mat. If that was busy, you went to the Cadillac. If the Cadillac, you went to the chair and you found a spot. If there was no spots, you left. You were not allowed to stay there and watch other people.
So that brings me to the sort of the next thing, which was the way in which Joe practiced. You had privates with Joe. How many did you have before you were sort of brought into the gym?
Well, you started in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
There was no notion of a private. There was just Joe helping you. And so the first time, he was with me the whole time. There was no one else in the gym. I constantly went back early in the morning just for that reason. And he stayed with me. But if 2 or 3 other people came in and Bob Seed or one of the early people weren't there, he would spend 5-10 minutes with me, 5-10 minutes with them. He'd move around. Or Clara would come in, and she never really worked closely with the client. Maybe Ron Fletcher or someone she liked and Joe didn't. But they were available, but when you got stuck, when you got through your leg working and you were thinking, what do I do next? And is it the 100? And you just went to the wall and looked at those charts, and you learn to read them. Little baby pictures of Joe. Oh, that's the next. But you couldn't ask the person next to you. You couldn't talk to anyone. He knew intuitively about the zone. He just knew you could get in the zone with this. And he didn't want you to interrupt. You couldn't have water. You couldn't take a break. You couldn't talk to anyone ever. And you found your way through it. And that's how I still do it today. And that's 70 years later. 60 years later.
Yeah. How would you identify the zone? What is the zone for you? What is that when you're in it? What does it feel like for you?
You're in it. The hallmark of the zone is it doesn't feel like anything. You just keep doing it. You get it in Pilates. You get it when you play competitive tennis or squash, or golfers get it for a few minutes when they address the ball. They just stop thinking entirely and just let their body do its stuff. that's what he wanted. He wouldn't let you take notes. If you stopped to try to remember, oh, three springs with the 100 or with the teaser, he'd interrupt you. He didn't want you to do that. He wanted your body to take you through a session.
So one of the hallmarks of like mindfulness, right, is that it's non-competitive, or some of the hallmarks of mindfulness, I should say, is that it's non-competitive, non-judgmental,
Right.
and that you're in your own experience.
That's
Right?
right.
And it doesn't necessarily just mean you're off meditating, but it means you're actually inside your own body having your own experience. And it sounds like this is very much a part of what he taught, and he taught it in a very physical way.
He taught it without teaching it because he wasn't aware of the verbalization of it. But you asked a baseball player, a center fielder, when somebody hits a long ball, why he all of a sudden ran to their right or ran backward. They can't tell you. They couldn't tell you in a million years. They said, because that's where the ball was coming down. But they had no mental operation. Same thing. Yeah, a pitcher throws a ball at 104 miles an hour that's curving and jumping around. You ask a batter what's in his mind. I'm just trying to hit the ball. And that's where he wanted you,
Right.
where you don't think about, oh, I'm doing the 100 now, and I have to point my toes, and my fingers should be spread, and I should be sitting up and get my chest forward. None of that.
I'm curious because you're still taking lessons. You see you go on vacation, you take sessions, you've met many instructors. How have you seen sort of the practice and the instruction change over the years?
Well, it's now a private, you mentioned. So you paying someone to just take care of you, or a semi-private or a class. And, you could say, well, that's not classic. That's not classic yielded 50 students. This yields 30 million. Which is the better thing for the survival of Joe's work? This. So it's different. The instructor is much more hovering over you, and it depends. There's some instructors. I had an instructor in France who spoke very little English. I spoke very poor French, and he was fabulous. He was like Joe. He knew how to guide you properly, but there was no conversation. There was no sit here, put your legs there, do this, do that. But he knew to make a correction, point your toes, push a little harder right now, just enough. And I've had others that talk me to death. I never come back. They asked me what I had for breakfast. He wouldn't do that. If he spent 100 words with you in a session, that was a lot. So,
and you spent a lot of time with him the latter part of his life. How old was he when you met him?
80.
He was 80.
Yeah.
And at that point, you said he was tired, worn out, and bitter. Why do you think he was bitter?
He was extraordinarily bitter because his dream, and we could go into why he had this goal, was to be recognized in some way as the savior. He personally felt that he had invented something or discovered something or found something. There's not really the right word for it. Uncovered something that was of enormous benefit to humanity. And the reason he was so sure of it, I don't think he could articulate it. And I have kind of reversed engineering it to put it back into his time in prison. in that period of his life, which he never talks about or wouldn't talk about, where he discovered it for himself, this method, this attention grabbing thing that got him through prison and then became something. And when George Balanchine and the ballet people saw it, they felt the same way. That I mean, I don't know. There's so many ballet people in Pilates, but if you ask them a lot about what exercises they do to warm up, it's an awful lot of Pilates. Even the bar work
Yeah.
has turned into a Pilates exercise. All the overhead bending and all that stuff. He did that for Balanchine. So he had this mission, this thing, and every doctor treated him like a lunatic. And there was a reason. He acted like a lunatic. He didn't engage in conversation. It was like if you walked down the street and some evangelist grabbed you and told you that God is coming tomorrow and holding your arms and you better get ready and Jesus is around the corner. And that's the way he was with everybody. But doctors rebuffed him. And when Eisenhower had his heart attack and he promised to help Eisenhower and wrote these letters, no one answered him. And he was exceptionally bitter about that because he was a conspiracy theorist. The doctors were not listening to him. Why? Because they wanted to make money. It's like every doctor wanted to make money. There were no doctors that cared about the patient, about health. They just needed to make money and sell pills. And that's how his head worked, which, didn't do him any good.
Uh-huh.
But so he had 50 people in a thing that he thought the world should do.
So he had 50 people sort of at the end of his life, 50 people who had sort of an understanding and a
Yeah.
feeling of the work. How many clients did he have that were like yourself that came in off the street?
Very few, very few. And I came from my mother. My mother came from a choreographer classmate of hers in college. And most of them came from someone in the dance world or in the arts. None of them came from a doctor. And over the years, I would see people come in, and his bedside or gym side manner was so off-putting that they just turn around and leave. And there were plenty of people that came for one session and thought, this is nuts, this is crazy, and never came back. Friends of mine, I'd send people and they would try one and it's, nah, not for me. I don't go for that stuff. So, he had no ability to market this. He had no ability at all to deal with prospective customers. So he got a lot of referrals from the dance world. And I mean, he had a couple of he had Cy Coleman, big time playwright. He had Jim Lipton, who was a very popular guy. I became friendly with all these people.
So that's interesting. It was sort of upper, it was at the Upper East Side then, or sort of the higher levels of society and the dance world that were the primary inspiration behind what we see as modern day Pilates.
Yeah. And they're the ones that put up the money to keep it going.
So Ken, one of the things that strikes me as John's talking is that Joe himself just had a very deep and abiding belief in and passion for his work. And what we see over and over with whether they're students of the education or they're coming to buy equipment or They're engaging with us at POTs. What we're seeing over and over is this same deep, abiding belief in and passion for Pilates. So I'm sure this is going to sound like a funny question, but if you were to put that passion and belief in this system doing good work for clients, sort of on a hierarchy, but where would you place that in terms of the current growth that we're seeing?
It's really kind of an interesting question. I actually got to think about it a little bit, but when you look at how positive people in in our industry are, right? That positivity is like really powerful. It's everywhere. And when you're one of the reasons why I really like doing what I do is because I get to work with people that are really positive about what they're doing. They don't complain all the time. I mean, they make fun of some of the things that are unpleasant, but they're really positive in general. And I think that's a really powerful part of what makes Pilates. I think what John was talking about is first of all, I was thinking when John was talking, he was saying, I was thinking this is not the ideal introductory session for a new client, what he was talking about. But then you started talking about how you couldn't do anything wrong, you could only improve. I thought, well, that's a really powerful message. And if you can walk away from that with that, and that's something that you can carry forward. But I think that improvement is something that is sort of the kind of the foundations or cornerstones of Pilates because you can always get better, and that I think that separates it from other modalities that are out there is that there's this kind of this long road to consistently getting better with lots of little steps in between where you can keep getting better, and that reward of successive successes is really fun for a lot of people. So I think that's a good takeaway for me. But hey, Joy, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go.
Hey, John, did you ever consider teaching Pilates?
Ooh,
Pardon
that's a
me?
good one.
I mean, here you are in the shadow of the greatest, and yeah, I mean, did it cross your mind?
I admit to teaching a lot of people I've lived with.
Mhm.
Let's put it that way. I've taught several ex-wives. I teach my lady love of the time now, and when others teach them, I am sometimes asked to help the teacher, and I
Mhm.
love doing it.
Mhm.
I tried here I live in a retirement community in a campus of 120 people here, and across the road another 250. And I have spoken twice to large groups of people about Pilates, about the book, and I have tried to influence higher management on teaching Pilates on equipment here.
Mhm.
We have a Pilates teacher here, and she's a lovely teacher and a good teacher, but it's all mat work. Well,
Mhm.
after 65 or 70, people hate getting down on the mat, and worse, at the end of a session, which could only be 25 minutes or half an hour, they can't get up. And that's not the feeling you
Right.
should leave with after Pilates. So I
Mhm.
keep saying I have a reformer here, thanks to you, Ken, and I would be happy to let them have it and even get another so we could start. And they freak out, the management, not the customers. And
Mhm.
again, I think as a marketing thing for Balanced Body, I think old people are it. I
Mhm.
mean, every studio I've gone to in Los Angeles, half the people are, over 60.
Mhm.
Teachers aren't,
Mhm.
but the people are because of equipment. I mean, even the crazy stretchy thing with the bungee cords. They love that. Older
Mhm.
people love it. They stand up and do all this stuff. They get on the reformer. You
Mhm.
make a couple of reformers with longer legs so they can get off. But that's, but I haven't got them interested, and I don't want to get politically involved here. But yeah, I've thought about teaching a lot.
Uh-huh. And what about the time when you knew Joe Pilates?
I had no expectations of anything
Mhm.
ever, and I had no idea that this was such a monumentally powerful thing,
Mhm.
even though it got me.
Mhm.
I didn't think it was so
We
powerful.
have that in common because I never thought this was any big deal. I was trying to avoid
Yeah,
making my first reformer, but go ahead. Go ahead.
uh, you know, I I liked it, but I didn't
Mhm.
think you could sell it to anyone else. And I was very happy being a lawyer,
Mhm.
making a living at it.
Mhm.
The people that were teaching it, I don't know how they got paid, if at all.
Mhm.
And I'm sure it was in cash and wasn't a big deal. And they loved it. That was it. John Winters loved it. Bob Seed loved it. Hannah loved it. They just loved it and loved Joe
Mhm.
and Clara. So I wasn't thinking this is for me. I was thinking I just love doing it, and I
Mhm.
love being there. And I was absorbing something from Joe
Mhm.
and Clara, but
Mhm.
mostly to the ether. It wasn't
Mhm.
like he was telling me like a grandfather,
Mhm.
let's go take a walk. John, you're not doing this. There was
Mhm.
nothing like that.
Pilates Perspectives is brought to you by Balanced Body. Maybe you don't have space for a full studio at home, but you still want a serious Pilates practice. Balanced Body gets it. We offer space-conscious reformers like the Metro IQ reformer and smart portable props that actually fit into everyday life. Apartments, shared spaces, and busy schedules included. Build a practice that works with your lifestyle, not against it. See what's possible for your home setup at Pilates.com. It sounds to me that legacy was on his mind, or or he hadn't quite reached what he was hoping in terms of adoption and um, recognition for Contrology, at 80. But today, if he were to come down today and take a look at, a Pilates studio, and multiple studios in one building in certain parts of the world and on every street corner and in groups and taught in various different ways and taught on reformers that have a lot of diversity in the way in which they're created and constructed and feel. What do you think he might think of that?
Well, I talk about it at the end of the book, and I'm trying to write about it in this play. I mean, first place, he wouldn't be able to take in the popularity. The only thing he would see originally, and this is my total guess, is the exercises. So if he happened to go to a Fletcher thing and see a whole bunch of people with a red stretchy, he'd go nuts. A red towel. He'd go absolutely crazy. What the? That's I. Oh, and it would be horrible if he saw a lot of the exercises that have evolved from the basic contrology. He'd say it wasn't in his program. And then he would be furious, emotionally, absolutely off the rails at that point. If you could get him to understand that what he left is the basis of everything that's happened, and that had that not happened, 30 million or 20 million, whatever it is, people wouldn't be doing it. And 4 million people wouldn't be teaching it, and one person wouldn't be making this equipment, another making that, and all this, and you wouldn't find it in China, and you wouldn't find it in Africa or Russia or even France or England. If he could be made to see that he didn't just invent the Nutcracker suite, he invented ballet, then maybe you could get him to calm down and understand. But
Yeah, he didn't just create exercises and a methodology. He created a movement, right? Then
that's correct. He didn't see that.
yeah. Let's look at, after Joe's death, the story I think is very important and very telling, that it was actually the client or his clients that reached out to you, is my understanding, on helping to figure out a way to keep the studio solvent and active.
Well, I think it was a little the other way around. I was close to Clara from going up there for soup and coffee and beer. So she kind of reached out to me to help her get things going. And I posted the notice on the door. Then I don't know whether someone came to me or Clara suggested it or I thought of it on my own. I said we ought to have a meeting with the customers. So we sent out a notice for a meeting and I got back a lot of responses. And I moved it from the studio to my office. And that's what started it. Because of my relationship with Clara and Joe, because of the fact my father and mother were involved and had some money to put into it, and because I was so enthusiastic about it personally and there frequently, I got selected to volunteer to put it together, and that's what I did. But I didn't do it thinking, oh boy, we'll keep this going. And one day there'll be millions of people doing it, and someone with a huge business, and another this, and teachers all over the world. That my thought was, there's 50 of us want a gym. Let's make a gym. And then I hired Romana.
Are you astounded when you think about it from that perspective, that you just you wanted 50 of you to have access to the work and to the legacy to where it is today?
Yes, I am astounded. When people come up to me and say, oh, good thing you did what you did. Good thing you went back the second time. It's a good thing you put people together. It's a good thing you tried to, you hired Romana. You saved Pilates. I saved Pilates. I didn't save Pilates. Pilates saved Pilates. And 15 other people, one of whom is sitting right here, Ken. That's the chain that saved it. All I did was kept the chain connected. And yeah, so I am astounded.
But John,
I had,
one broken link is all it takes, right?
well, that's right.
Yeah.
Had you lost the lawsuit, psh, goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Had Romana not taken the job and we closed the doors, goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Had what's his name on the West Coast not opened the studio, taught other people, got in touch with Ken to make equipment.
Ron Fletcher.
Ron Fletcher,
Yeah, if Ron hadn't jumped in at that point, the chain would have been broken.
Yeah, I mean, every one of these small decisions, right, were pivotal at the time. You have, I mean, you can see that in retrospect, but you have no idea when it's happening. I mean, Ron ended up growing up the West Coast while the East Coast, started to, we had some of the elders that, the elders, right, who are just starting to take the work and massage it on the East Coast. And Let's actually bring this around to then some other pivotal moments come around with the trademark lawsuit. What's your opinion? What was your opinion then of the lawsuit?
I knew pretty early on, as I now know in the second series of crap that Sean is throwing out there, that he doesn't have a case, and he did not have a valid trademark. And if you asked anybody on the street, can you trademark someone's name? They would say, oh, of course not. But so he had an incredible equitable burden to overcome, which was how wrong it is for someone to take the work of someone else and their name and own it to keep other people from using it. But I also knew that there was no one Pilates at that time. There were many Pilates. So the trademark is supposed to identify it. Balanced Body's trademark, it tells the world that this machine that was made by Balanced Body has a certain quality, a certain aspect to it, because that's why Balanced Body put its name on it. And when you buy Coca-Cola and it says Coca-Cola, you know what you're getting. But how could you possibly know what you're getting when it's a service, Pilates, and anyone can do it, and does do it, and calls himself Pilates? So it was a huge gamble by Sean and the lawyers, Bressler, that Ken would crack and would settle, and he lost, as he should have. And that's what he's trying with what he did try with the photos. So we raised some money, got the Transparency Project, defended vigorously, and he's at least at the moment gone away.
Hey, Ken, as John's talking, it's dawning on me that here you are over on the West Coast making the reformers, right? But the trademark lawsuit, is that when sort of East meets West for you in terms of some of the history around Pilates?
You mean from an adversarial sense or from a teamwork
Just
sense?
in the sense of you now meet John Steele, you get you get more of his story. You spend time with Eve Gentry.
Mm-hmm.
You're spending more time with the elders, right? Like it just sort of seems like in a strange twist of fate, that period of time, give or take 5 to 7 years on either end of the trademark lawsuit, was really pivotal in stitching together sort of what came before into the future of equipment being more available and people being able to utilize the term Pilates and the growth of Pilates more widely.
It's really funny. During the lawsuit, it took, I had like what was it called, post-traumatic stress.
Yeah,
there was like PTS. Well, I couldn't even take a shower without thinking about the lawsuit. It lasted for almost it lasted like for almost 2 years.
Well, I mean, we've said his name. We could call it post-traumatic Sean disorder.
Yeah, there you go. But then still for a long time after that, it was like every time I saw the word Pilates written, whether it was on like in front of a studio, it's like, it kind of like, I look at that and for a long time it was, how can they do that? And then it became, now they can do that and we can talk about Pilates. And the best thing about this whole thing is that not only can we talk about it, but we can also like give credit to the man who discovered it, right? Or created it or found it, however you want to say it. But to be able to take that away from us, to be able to give credit to the guy that discovered it, just to me seemed totally absurd.
I just want to add to that. When I was asked by Kevin Bowen to be the keynote speaker at one of the very early conventions of Pilates, PMA.
Yeah.
and there were 300 or 400 people there. And I surveyed the audience before I spoke, and it was pretty clear to me that at least half of them didn't know that Pilates was a person at that time. And half of those who knew he was a person thought he was still alive 40 years after his death. It occurred to me that Joseph Pilates, the person I had this terribly deep affection for, was lost in the shuffle. There was Pilates the work and nothing else. Right. So that's when I started speaking a lot at these conventions. And when I started thinking about writing the book was to revive the presence of this extraordinary, very different human being, Joseph Pilates. And it reached a emotional crisis in that lawsuit because all I could possibly think about was this person who was trying to own Joe's name. And I couldn't get that out of my mind. How can this ever exist? And, fortunately, Ken was there to save it. But had it not been saved, and Romana and Sean would go around saying, "Oh, you're not doing Pilates. Oh no, that's not Pilates. Oh no, you do the 100. You must do 100." I mean, come on. I mean, that would have been the end of it all. And then they'd have to pay. And it would be an increasing amount of money. Ken would have to pay to put his little thing on the equipment. It would have been the end of everything that Joe had ever stood for and everything that made sense. So, yeah, that lawsuit, it was technical legal problem, but boy, it was certainly much more than that. And the judge, who wrote an 88-page opinion, saw that.
Ken, because I remember that PMA. So Ken, and for both of you, Ken and John, looking actually at the PMA, its origins and its impacts, what are your and its current state? What are your thoughts on sort of the need for some kind of a guiding organization for Pilates today? And what would that organization, what would it need to fulfill today?
So I strongly feel that Pilates needs some kind of an association, some kind of a group, some kind of an advocacy group that will keep Pilates in the public eye. I think it's really important right now. Right now, we're incredibly fortunate that we're getting so much publicity. It's on TV. It's like I watch a TV series and they're talking about coming from Pilates, and I see it multiple times, and it's amazing. But to keep it, I mean, I see my role, but I think to keep Pilates in the same trajectory that it's on right now, we have to work on that right now, this minute. We can rely on the past, but we need to work on shaping it for the future. And making sure that our clients understand what Pilates is and understand what it can do and understand the stories around it, so that they can instill in their customers a perception of what Pilates is all about. And then if people can think about that when they're taking Pilates classes, they'll know what to look for, and they'll also know that if they have a bad experience, it just may not be Pilates. It may just be a bad experience. But I think it would be important to have an association that would do that, and to be an inclusive organization. So I would support that 100%.
What do you think, John?
Well, I agree entirely with that. I would even go in a little more detail about it. When the pandemic struck, and there will be perhaps another or similar problems, people were helpless. I mean, I know it. I got lots of calls from studios that I was friendly with. What do I do? How do I do? Uh, there needed to be an organization that said, okay, here's what we can do. We can get an exemption for this. We can help you. We can give you guidelines for how you can teach, masks, outdoors, this, that, and the other thing.
Mhm.
We can do all of this, and we can lobby for legislation, which other organizations got,
Mhm.
permitting certain
Mhm.
exemptions. And we know people in every state of this union that can help you with their state legislature, uh, get an exemption, get this, get that. And
Right.
if you need financing, we can identify banks that are willing to make loans
Mhm.
under these circumstances. That's one thing. The other thing is, yes, there should be constant interaction with legislatures because they pass all kinds of laws about certifying this, about that, but equipment has to be examined by so and so,
Mhm.
importing, exporting. And they picked this place, Florida, for that. That's the wrong place. It's
Mhm.
Washington, D.C.
Mm.
And that organization should work closely with the yoga people. We should work closely with all the other gym companies, having a relationship. And there should be information in the organization.
Mhm.
I want to open a Pilates studio. Everyone does that. How many people? Oh, it'll just be me. It'll be in my garage.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they ought to know how to do that, how to get financing, what kind of insurance they need,
Mhm.
where to get. That's what this
Yeah.
organization should do.
I
And
know
not
when I started, I would have loved much more guidance, business guidance.
Mhm.
I was in New York at the time. What were the rules and the, regulations? What,
exactly.
I needed to hire an accountant and I needed to maybe have a business manager. I like, things. Yeah, it would have been nice to have that kind of guidance. So you're saying business, sort of business acumen advocacy, legislative like engagement with other like careers,
Help,
and help, and
help, just
yep,
plain
Mhm.
help.
and just plain help. And Ken, you're talking about advocacy that's going to continue to bring the brand name of Pilates forward. I mean, I think
Protect
that's very powerful, and we're at an impactful time of change and growth. That both of what you're bringing up really, having some kind of an organization. I'm in agreement with both of you. Having some form of an organization would be hugely beneficial.
I also just want to point out, and this is probably a little bit more negative, but I talk to a lot of people, and they don't see the need to financially support an organization. They don't see the need for it, and they kind of look at it in terms of, if I don't get everything that I want, then I don't want to participate. It's they don't see an organization as kind of a democracy that works for most people most of the time. They see it from a more selfish point of view, and I think that if you've got a profession, it's worth protecting, and the only way you're going to do it is with a large group of people, and you're not always going to get exactly what you want. You're just going to get mostly what you want most of the time, and that's what you need to expect.
Mm. Hey, John, now that Pilates is in the mainstream, what would you say are a couple of the positives and what might be the negatives? And Ken, I'm going to toss that to you after John answers.
Well, I don't see any negatives. I mean, the negatives in the world are the negatives that exist. If you want a lot of doctors, you're going to get bad doctors in the bunch. That's the way it is. If you want a lot of lawyers, you're going to get bad lawyers. If you want a lot of architects, you're going to get bad architects. And if you want a lot of Pilates teachers, you're going to get teachers that are not as good as the good teachers. That's just the way the world works. Every player on every Major League Baseball team is there's some players that don't cut the mustard, and others do. So I don't see that as a negative. I see that as the way life is. If you restrict the format to one thing and restrict the qualification to teach it to those 5 people that just adore it, that's where Pilates will be. So I see this ever expanding world of Pilates as a great thing.
I also, what you said, it's true, and probably, as being a Pilates company, I probably shouldn't say this, but you know, at the end of the day, anything that gets people off their butts and moving is better than nothing at all, right?
That's right.
And so, and if we're getting people moving, then we're one step closer to having a improving society. And guess what? We're also one step closer to getting them to do Pilates. So
Right.
it's not such a bad thing, to have Pilates grow like it's growing. And I think, but one of the things I keep thinking that's so cool is that it's, and I actually got this from Elizabeth Larkin, but it's not, what's kept Pilates going all these years is not any big corporation or marketing company or anything. It's really been the word of mouth that Pilates studios generate, right? And it's the word of mouth that keeps people coming back, and it's the word of mouth that's growing our industry. And so it's got to be at that level, at the studio level, where we're doing our own marketing, and we're marketing not just the studio, but we're marketing the brand Pilates that we all own, right? Everybody owns it. It doesn't cost them anything. We got to keep promoting that and cultivating that and keep making it better as a group, as an industry, to keep it going into the future.
So
Yep.
for either of you, is there anything such as bad? Is there anything that you would consider as bad Pilates?
Well, there is, yes. I would think if there's a teacher that puts people in danger, the person will come out of a session hurt and blab about it. Pilates is dangerous. That would be bad. And, perhaps there could be a complaint of a bureau in this thing. But in general, no.
What do you think, Ken?
Yeah, I agree with John. I would just only add to that I think that the most important thing is, and this comes from Jay Grimes, is to kind of teach the body in front of you, and to know what the group you're teaching, or what the individual you're working with, what their capabilities are, and teach appropriate material for that body that's working, or those bodies that are in front of you. So not to ask too much, just ask the right amount based on who you're talking to and who you're teaching. And I think that's critical, because I there's a lot of choreography that's out there that's really exciting and really fun to perform, but it's probably not right for everybody, and you can't assume that either. Oh, and I would also just say the other thing I really go crazy about is all the stuff that's on social media. So I always say that if it's on social media, just assume you shouldn't teach it. It could be dangerous.
Well, when
Probably
you
is.
were saying it grew by word of mouth, I was like, today it's word of mouth and Instagram, right? So we have to be careful.
It totally is, but the problem is it's not curated by anybody that knows what they're doing. So and who's deciding if it's appropriate for who? Just don't know.
I have a question for you. So you didn't know at the time that you were part of building a community, but now that you look back in retrospect, what impact do you think Pilates has on an individual? And then what impact does the Pilates community, or can it have on the world around it?
Well, I think I noticed in New York when I went to studios there, and I used to go back there a lot, how social that crowd was. The crowd that went to the mat class or the reformer class. They were all friendly, and same in California. Is that a community? I don't know. It's they go out to lunch and all of that afterwards. It's any different than a pickleball group or a kayaking group or people who play golf together. I don't think very much different. The community comes together at the educational seminars and stuff that, Balanced Body does and stuff that PMA used to do very aggressively. And that's a big community and a strong community, and they're very attached to each other. And they talk about how to run a studio. They talk about this. They talk about things but the groups that socially, there's a lot of socialization in Pilates classes. Like, what's that bike thing?
Spinning?
Spinning, yeah. There's a lot of that in spinning. There's a lot of crazy dancing stuff they do. But they're there for the moment. They're there for the exercise. They go home.
What do you think about Pilates lends itself to community?
Lends itself to community?
Yeah, what about the practice of Pilates creates sort of passion, that belief in and passion for Pilates? Like, what is it that builds that desire in people to want to be around other like-minded Pilates people?
Well, because I think it's mutually supportive. You go with friends to Pilates, you make friends at Pilates, 10 o'clock, see you at Pilates. I think that's all very helpful and good. But people go to Pilates because they enjoy it. They have pleasure from it. They see improvements to their health, to their body, to their outlook. Their sex life improves, and everything seems to work better. So, it's a la mode. It's a social thing to do of the time. So there's tons of reasons why they go, but they come back because they want to come back.
Ken, did you ever think when you're going through the trademark lawsuit, on the other side of that, you would see as many people involved in Pilates as they are today?
I'm still surprised how fast it's growing, and yeah, every day I just, I never pictured it to be at this size or magnitude that it is right now, but it's just that way. It just works. It works. That's
Because I think John
Yeah.
said it really well in the very beginning when he was like, he went for his first session and something happened. I think people go to Pilates and something happens and they can't quite put their fingers on it, but they know everything they do is a little better, right? And it keeps them coming back, and it keeps the teacher inspired and curious to do better, and that just kind of starts that positive cycle around Pilates.
Yeah.
It's exciting. I mean, I just think it's exciting.
I mean, there's probably a multitude of ways that you could get the same benefit that you get from Pilates, but there's really no way that I've ever seen it comes close to giving you all that Pilates gives you as efficiently as it gives it to you.
Right.
It's just, that's the amazing thing. And I think that amount of improvement that you get in impact on your body in that shorter period of time, and how you feel when you leave that session, is just, you can't duplicate it anywhere else. And I think that's one of the things that makes Pilates magic.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, John, before we go into rapid fire questions, I have one more big question to ask you, something I've always been interested in. Clara, tell us a little bit, like when you think of Clara Pilates, what is like the first thing that comes to mind?
The first thing that comes to mind is a picture of a sweet old lady, skinny little old lady in a white nurse's outfit. And that's almost where it begins and ends. She was just a very kind, very shy, very thoughtful, just completely the opposite of Joe. When Joe walked into a room, everyone knew Joe was in the room. When Clara walked into the room, no one knew she was in. She was up against a wall in a corner. but when you needed her, she was there. And she had a certain smartness about people. When I came back to her after failing to get Romana to even open the kimono a little on whether she would take over teaching, she told me I did something wrong. I mean, I don't know how she came to that conclusion, but that's how she was very sensitive to how people acted and behaved. And she was so much in Joe's shadow, it was hard to fix her in space. And then after he died, she was so dependent on all of us. I named one of my daughters after her. But she's a wonderful, wonderful person that just, here's this human being, Joe, that massive personality and very unusual and hugely creative. And here's Clara. And, I don't have much to, I think of her extremely warmly and lovingly, but it's not like Joe, who I constantly curious about how he got there, what he did, why he said this. I don't think about that with Clara.
Ken, you've done a lot of research on Joe and Clara. Is there anything that comes for you about Clara that stands out?
When I've talked to people like Ron Fletcher and Bruce King and Jay Grimes, they all seem to have relationships with Clara, and they seem to refer to Clara as the person that kind of was the person behind the scenes making the studio working, and the person that sometimes compensated for Joe's, I don't want to say misbehavior, but for kind of this lack of social skills, if we want to call it that. But what I kept on hearing, kind of the recurring theme is that she did have relationships with people, and she was important to them. But what I don't hear about Clara, and very little about Joe, and maybe John can shed some light on this, is when you take the Pilates and the movement thing away, was there any other interests involved that you know about with Joe or Clara?
No.
Other than Pilates?
None.
Mhm.
None.
It was everything, huh?
They
Yes.
never went to movies. They never read books. They knew nothing about politics or sports.
Mhm.
And you try to go there once a week and have a beer and soup, and you could sit at that table and there would be dead silence for 5-10 minutes. Had to get used to that.
Uh-huh.
And it was there was not a book in the house
Uh-huh.
or a magazine.
Okay.
And you would think Joe and Clara would be interested in ballet and stuff like that. They were interested in the bodies that moved in ballet,
Mhm.
but that was it.
Mhm.
Clara knew everyone's name.
Mhm.
Joe knew no one's name.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
What did he call you?
He called me John.
Yeah. He knew your name. All right, ready? Rapid fire questions. What is your favorite Pilates exercise and why?
I think short spine, because I think it involves a stretch that you're in control of, but you immediately feel is helpful to you.
Very good. What is your least favorite Pilates exercise?
I always hated when I got to the 100, but I didn't hate the 100. I think the teaser was also on my hate list, but hard to do.
On your hate list because it was hard to do?
Well, I always knew that I could do it better. You never
Right.
felt like with the 100, when you got the 100 done, and you were huffing and puffing a little, at least you knew you did the 100. But with
Right.
the teaser, there was always something more. I could have,
Yeah.
I had to cheat here and there or wobble or something. It tested you very right to the end. Me, anyhow.
What is your definition of Pilates?
Uh, Amazing.
Amazing. Boom. Exclamation point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. And where do you see Pilates going in the future? And what do you hope for the larger Pilates community?
Well, I see it constantly expanding, like the universe, and my hope is that there is some centralized business help for the diffuse community that
Mhm.
exists. If I had another hope, a sub hope would be we stop all the crap about uh, the original, the authentic, the real, the this, the that. There's Pilates, period.
So if it makes you feel amazing, we can call it Pilates.
Yeah, that's right.
That-
Maybe
that's
you
that, you know
we
what?
get
There's
thanks to the
that doesn't
man
suck.
whose picture is below.
Mhm.
You can call walking Pilates.
That's fabulous. Ken, that's not dissimilar to what we talked about, which is sort of, Pilates in the future, that sense of expansion.
Mhm.
Like if you could see 30 years into the future, like what would it look like?
I can tell you what I'd like to see. I don't, well, I'll tell you what. I mean, it kind of in my personal journey and all this stuff is I've grown to realize this, because I wasn't like this originally. I didn't consider fitness to be a really critical part of my life, right? It wasn't that important, right? And being a part of this industry has become a big part of my life. Um, and I realized that it's not an important part of so many other people's lives, right? So in my big picture, in my dream, we get more people that are really excited about their personal fitness and how it affects them and the positivity around that. And it really becomes part of their life. Just like brushing their teeth, and just like having a good night's sleep. It's just, what am I doing to develop my own personal health? What am I doing to stay fit, right? And making that part of everyone's life would be really exciting thing for me. And of course, as part of that, more people will be doing Pilates. And if more people find Pilates, if more people just get healthier, then and this gets back to my training in political science. When people have something to lose, they strive to be better. And if people, are in control of their health and they want to keep their health and they're happy about their health, then they're gonna stay positive and they're gonna work to do more positive things. And their disposition is going to improve. And then maybe we won't have so many stupid people around us, or not stupid people, but doing stupid things.
So
But
not only do you feel amazing, you end up living in an amazing world. Wouldn't that be
yeah,
great?
wouldn't that be great? Yeah. I mean, I think that was part of Pilates' psyche. I mean, I think that's why he wanted to get,
Yes.
to make this part of President Kennedy's fitness program. I think that if he realized that if he got everybody just being movement oriented, right, and being physical, and that being an important part of their life, then that would improve the quality of society, which I 100% agree with him. I just, he was a little bit ahead of his time, and may still be ahead of his time,
Mhm.
but what a cool thing to aspire to.
Yeah, that was one of the things when I read the book, John, that I kept thinking is he was ahead of his time. He was just very much ahead of his time. And I sometimes think that visionaries like that, they eat, breathe, live their inventions and their ideas, and they are 100% in. And so much of that ethos has is still in every instructor and studio owner that we certainly come across. And it's exciting. It's exciting to see, and that kind of built in passion for something. I think we still are in the infancy of it, hopefully. And it has many more tenants and lots more growth ahead of it, which is exciting.
Give them something to lose and you'll change society. And
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
And I
Fantastic.
agree with you, Joy, or Ken, I forget. But I think there was some, Joe was a pacifist of the first order. And even though he taught boxing and loved boxing, he hated violence. And I think he felt that people who had happy, healthy lives would also reject violence.
Hmm.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, not bad.
It's fantastic. Well, thank you both. I'm with John Steele, author of Caged Lion. Do you want to hold it up one more time to somebody?
I put it away.
Here we go.
I put it back under my pillow.
Yeah.
There we are.
Hey,
There we are.
but before you close, I just want to thank John one more time about all that you've done in my life and for everybody in the Pilates world. And, I hope that when you go to sleep tonight, you think about the millions and millions of people whose lives you affected in a really positive way. You got something to be proud of. So I thank you for that.
You
Oh
too.
my gosh.
Same to you,
Yeah,
sir.
thank you. And we thank you both. It's really a lovely way to, it's a lovely contribution from both of you. And John, thank you so much for sharing those feelings and sensations from those early days, because it matters so much that we bring forward that history into today. It's very exciting. And we're really, really super grateful.